Going live in the background now. Hopefully that'll actually work this time. Okay, cool. So just to get off again, obviously we're going to be going through the three main things you're going to be looking for in a good property deal. Awesome to have you on, John. Thank you very much for joining us. People waiting at YouTube channel. Yes, so we had people at YouTube. So we actually had 4 people waiting there, struggling to get on. We managed to just get that live. Unfortunately, YouTube's been a little bit funny today, but fortunately it seems to be up and running now. Yes, awesome, John. Awesome to have you on there. I don't understand why it was messing around like that on YouTube, and these things, it happens. So like I say, the things we're going to be covering today, the 3 main core items that we're covering today is what makes up a good deal, and the 3 things you need to make sure your deal has to make that deal work. Okay, so what makes that a good deal? Thank you for letting me know, by the way, John. I appreciate it. I may have just let it run had you not mentioned that. But yeah, it looks like we've got a few people on there, which is cool. Michael, awesome to have you on, buddy. Good to see you. It's been a long time since we spoke. So yeah, hope you're doing really well. Yeah, and hope life is treating you well and you're managing to keep safe. But yes, so as I say, the 3 main things you're looking for, number 1 is cash flow, number 2 is discount, number 3 is demand. Okay, and as I said earlier, cash flow is defined as your income minus your expenses equals your cash flow. Now, it's very possible to have a negative cash flow. So an income that minuses an expenses, and the expenses are greater than the income, which leaves you a negative income on a monthly basis. If you think about it in terms of scalability, so how much can you scale your portfolio off the back of that? If you've got a portfolio of negatively cash flowing like properties, how many of those could you own? Would it be a lot or a few? Okay. Hey, Nick, awesome to have you on. Thanks for joining the stream, man. Very cool to see you on. But yeah, so would it be a lot or a few? Okay, and of course, the answer is if you have a lot of negatively cash flowing properties, there's only so many you can buy before you physically cannot afford to maintain that portfolio. Now, in terms of a positively cash flowing portfolio where the income is higher than the expenses, okay, how many of those could you buy? And this is the $1 million question, because the answer is very simply as many as you can possibly get your hands on. Okay, now in terms of how you'd figure out whether a property cash flows, whether a deal cash flows, I'll go through the cash flow figures in a minute. We'll actually do a quick cash flow calculation so you can see how the whole thing works. Okay, the second thing you need to make sure of is discount. Okay, discount. I appreciate my 2 looks a little bit funny. It's okay, but discount. So making sure you buy a property for a discount. So you're buying it. The term is BMV. This is a term that's taunted around or touted around. Not my term. I don't tend to like it. I like a discount. Okay, and so BMV stands for below market value, just so you know. But I like discount, buying for a discount. Now, there's 2 trains of thought when it comes to buying for a discount. So some people think of a discount as physically buying the house for less than it's worth. Okay, the problem is there's a lot of gray area in that statement. Whereas for myself, I like to buy a house for less than what it would be worth in good condition, minus refurbishment costs. Okay, so basically making sure I get a discount even if you take into account refurbishment costs. I mean, this is my personal view. So we're going to be going through a little bit as to how you figure out what's a good discount in a minute. And then the third thing is the demand. Now, the demand dictates not just the demand for you to be able to buy the house, because of course the demand's there, otherwise you wouldn't buy it. The demand is you taking a look at the rental demand or the sale demand. Okay, these are 2 of the major factors you need to be paying attention to ahead of actually just investing within an area. Okay, hey Suta, awesome to have you on the stream, buddy. Good to see you, man. Welcome. Good to see you. Hope you're keeping safe. Hope everything's going well with you guys. So does BMV actually exist? Okay, really, really good question there, Kathy. So does BMV exist? Does below market value actually exist? Now, it depends where you're investing. And I don't say this lightly or flippantly. If you primarily invest in London or places like that, it's typically very difficult to buy a house for a significant discount. So you'll be buying a house maybe for 5% if you're really lucky of a discount. Okay, but often that'll be accounted for in other costs, legal stamp, all that kind of fun stuff. So in terms of buying for a discount in London, it's typically very, very challenging. And that's purely because if you take a look at supply and demand, in London, there's only so much supply, but of course, the demand for London properties is very, very heavy. And that's not just London investors investing there. That's investors not only from all over the country, but actually all throughout the world. So all throughout Europe, all throughout Asia, all investing very heavily within the London markets, Russia, et cetera, et cetera. So your supply and demand is out of whack, which means it's very difficult to get a discount. Now, when it comes to getting a good discount, my suggestion personally is that you want to be heading yourself up north. So just work your way further up the country. The further up the country you go, surprisingly, the easier it is to get a better discount on a house because of the supply and demand chain. Because most of the investors that invest in the UK markets tend to either invest in London, in Birmingham, in Manchester City. So they have little hotspots, little niches where they like to invest. Whereas if you're investing, whereas if you're looking in places like, I don't know, Middlesbrough, or you're looking in Blackpool, or you're looking in Preston, or in Newcastle. So the wouldn't say less well known, but certainly the less well trodden areas where you get a lot less property investment. And what you tend to find is that supply demand chain is a little bit more in balance, more in keeping. So it makes it much easier for you to be able to get good deals there. We'll go through that a little bit more in depth in a minute. Okay, now I actually wanted to go through cash flow and the cash flow calculation, how it is you figure out whether a property cash flows. And I appreciate it says income minus expenses equals cash flow, but it's actually what are the figures that are included? What are the things you need to account for? So I'm going to go through those with you quickly, if that's okay with you guys, of course. Okay, and like I say, please feel free to pop any questions you have in the chat box. I'm more than happy to answer anything as I go. Okay, so our starting point is cash flow, right? This is where we're kicking off. Okay, so there's a few things you want to account for when it comes to cash flow. So of course you've got your income. Now, in terms of the income when it comes to investing in property, those of you that have thought this through will already know the answer, which is very simply your income comes in the form of rent. Okay, that's your income. Okay, then your outgoings, there's a few. Okay, there's a few. So you've got a couple of choices. So either you can buy it on a mortgage or you can buy it for cash. It's completely down to you. My suggestion, as you would have picked up from one of our previous sessions, I think it was the first episode, we actually went through the power of leveraging the banks. Okay, and it's something we'll break down a little bit more in depth as we go into this in the future. But essentially, if you buy on a mortgage, typically you can actually buy significantly more houses because you have to spend less money per house, but your income is actually higher overall for your money expended, including mortgage costs, okay, providing you're investing in the right area and you're doing it correctly, which is something we go through a little bit more in depth later on. Okay, so your outgoings, your outgoings. So your first outgoing that you typically want to account for is your mortgage, okay? So your mortgage payment, well, we normally call it mort, but for the interest of simplicity, your mortgage, okay? That is your first expense that you always need to account for. Okay, then you've got other expenses, okay? So I live down in Kent. I'm down in Sevenoaks in Kent right now. Most of our portfolio has been northwest of the UK, Blackpool, Manchester, Wigan, Warrington, all around those sort of areas. Do you think if I get a call from a tenant at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning saying, "Hi, Richard, I'm locked out. I've lost my key. Could you come let me in?" Do you think I'll be saying, "No problems, I'll see you there in 5 hours"? The answer is obviously no. I'm not going to be saying that. I'll be saying, speak to the letting agent. The letting agent can deal with it, okay? Because my time is more valuable than money, okay? My time is the most valuable asset I have in life. So what I tend to do is I tend to leverage all the management and maintenance of the portfolio so that I can keep my time, and it's at a very low cost. Lettings agents tend to be very, very, very inexpensive, okay? So the first cost is management. Oh, sorry, the second cost. Okay, I'll go through the costs and prices and structure in a minute. Okay, but just so you get an idea. So mortgage management. Okay, do you think that's it? Do you think I have no other costs? Or do you think that there might be one or two other costs before I finally get down to my cash flow? Okay, and of course, we're missing a major cost over here at the minute, okay, which is what we call our MO. So our monthly operating expenses. Okay, so MO stands for monthly operating expenses. Make sure you're making a note of this stuff. This is extremely important that you actually are aware of this. So I keep moving the screen around because I've got a lot of conversations. So insurance and MO, exactly right, John. Okay, insurance and MO. So MO stands for monthly operating expenses. Okay, now what is included within the MO is maintenance. Okay, so covering costs for maintenance. I'll explain how Mo works in a second, but covering costs for maintenance. Okay, then covering costs for insurance, so your monthly insurance on the property. Okay, covering that cost. Okay, and then voids. So a void is between tenancies. So when a tenant moves out and a tenant moves in, you have a period in the middle which is called a void period. Now, unfortunately for us in the UK, in buy-to-lets as a standard, the typical void period is 1 to 2 weeks across the UK in a buy-to-let. So very, very short space of time. And the typical tenancy is between 18 and 36 months. So very long for a tenancy for a very small void period. Of course, there is exceptions to the rule, but this is a general rule of thumb. Okay, so monthly operating expenses, which covers your maintenance, your insurance, and your voids. Now, how Mo works is on a monthly basis, you're going to be putting away a percentage of your income. Okay, and that percentage that you put away, that is your rainy day fund, and your insurance also gets paid out of that. So when all hell breaks loose, when your boiler breaks or anything goes wrong, you have your pot of money there. Okay. Now, how we typically account for this is our management. We normally account for at 10%. It's fairly standard in the industry. Now, of course, if you're based in London, you're speaking to letting agents over here, the likes of Foxtons and stuff, they're obscenely offensive. Okay, in the north of England, you're typically somewhere around 10%, inclusive or exclusive of VAT. Just depends on the letting agent. Okay, then your MO, your monthly operating expenses, we also account for this as 10%. Now, please know that this is 10% of your rent received. Okay, 10% of your rent received. And then your mortgages, you're normally in and around a 3% interest rate. Okay. Now, the only types of mortgages we do is your interest-only mortgages. We don't do capital and interest repayment. We mentioned this on episode 1. We'll go through this again in the future. Don't worry. We actually dive into this whole subject in depth, just so you're aware, on our 3-day training, which we're running in a couple of weeks as well. Okay. So your cash flow is basically your rent, whatever that is, minus your mortgage, minus your management, minus your operating expenses, equals your cash flow. Okay, that's it. Now, if this figure, based on this being at 5%, okay, so I'm going to teach you something called stress testing. And if this doesn't make sense, it's fine. Just ask the question. I'm happy to go through it again. Okay, but stress testing. So if you work this out at 5% interest, okay, there's actually mortgage calculators online. There's a whole bundle of them. And we actually go through how to do this on the trainings as well, just so you guys are aware of how to actually calculate out mortgage costs. But if you work based on a 5% interest, if your cash flow is greater than £100 a month at 5% interest, okay, then as far as we're concerned, this has passed a stress test, and this then makes up a good cash flowing property. Now, if it is less than that, okay, then this property is probably better suited to flipping. Okay, so buying, renovating, and selling for a profit. Okay, so when we talk about number one, the most important thing that you need to make sure your investment property has, okay, it needs to cash flow at over £100 a month at 5% interest. Okay, does this make sense to you guys? Just want to sort of check in with you guys. For those of you on the live stream that are currently tuning in, just want to check in. Does this all make sense? Are you all happy with everything we're covering here? Okay, the challenge is I know it takes a minute for the comments to come through. Okay, but I'm going to assume yes. Okay, then the second item that we wanted to cover here. Okay, so obviously we've just covered cash flow. Okay, if you did miss that, don't worry. If you want to go over it again, you're more than welcome to pick this up on the recording. We will be leaving the stream out, and you can rewind it, watch it as many times as you want. Okay, okay, perfect. Sounds like you guys have caught it, which is awesome. Okay, the second thing that we're going to be talking about as the most important, as we discussed earlier, is discount. Okay, so discount. Now, this is an important one because the way that the vast majority of property investors invest in property and build their portfolios is they do not take into account the discount. Okay, a lot of people go, oh, well, you know, it's on the market for 165. If I get it for 150, I've got my discount. Bollocks. Bollocks. Because the property might only be worth 140,000. What the asking price is, what they are asking for on the sale is irrelevant. Okay. The important thing is, what is the actual value of the property? Okay, what is the actual value of the property? Now, the term we use when we tend to discuss this stuff is called the DUV. Okay, now DUV actually stands for done up value. Okay, So you have to discover what that value is on the property before you even have an inkling as to whether you manage to buy it for a discount. Now, for those of you that are already investing, and I know there's going to be a few of you on here that have bought properties before, we're going to be going through some of this, and I know some of you are going to go, yep, didn't do that. The vast majority of amateur investors don't do this bit, and that's fine. The point is that you got out there and you started to get moving, and now you're learning how to do it rather than having never learned that in your life. So it's important. Okay, it's very cool. Okay, so the very first thing you need to understand is what is the done-up value? Okay, how much is the property worth in good condition? Now, there's a couple of ways in which you figure this out. So firstly, okay, you get automated valuation tools. Okay, now there's a couple in the market. So you got one called ValPal. Okay, ValPal, and they're okay. I would say they're probably, my estimate's probably around 70% accurate. Okay, so they're okay. They're good for an initial cursory glance. Okay, then you've got something called Home Track. Okay, which is these are deemed as the market leader. Okay, recently bought by Zoopla for 140 million, and so on and so forth. I'd say they're probably give or take around 85% accurate. Okay, which is okay. It's not bad. Again, it just gives you a very good guide or sightline as to what it is. And the third one, which is the business that we are literally building in the minute, okay, which is called True Vals, okay, which we're expecting to have give or take a 95% accuracy. Now, unlike Home Track, we're actually going to be running this with with machine learning, artificial intelligence. We have 82 different data points to make sure that the valuations are very accurate. So it's very exciting. This will have been launched probably within the next 6 to 8 weeks. So if you want to run valuations, that's a good starting point. Okay. Now, once you've done your automated valuation through the automated valuation tool, you're also going to want to get confirmation through a couple of ways. Okay. So the second way is direct comparables. Okay, what I mean by that is taking a look online, okay, seeing what houses have sold for. Now, the important word is sold, not for sale, because for sale doesn't matter. So our house here is probably worth about 800, 900,000. I could put this in the market for 1.5 million. Okay, nice and simple. But the fact is, I probably wouldn't get it because that's not what it's worth, right? So in terms of comparables, you want to be putting a property up for, you want to be taking a look at what a property sold for in the area, because that's the only way you know of the true value. Okay, so John, question, is discount important if you can? Is discount important if you can buy a second property and get immediate cash flow? Okay, so buy a sound property and get an immediate cash flow. So yes and no. So really good question there, John. The reason discount is important is because it tends to mean that you have less money invested in each individual deal, which means the money you have can stretch into more deals. So let's just say you have 100 grand in the bank, 100 grand that you're ready to invest with. You can either buy it the old-fashioned way, where you end up with 3 or 4 houses that will cash flow maybe 250 a month each. So you end up with £1,000 a month, which is not too bad. Okay, or you can buy for a discount where you can end up with 6, 7 houses. Okay, so you end up with 1,750 a month cash flow as opposed to 1,000 for the very same bit of money. The only difference is you bought for a discount, okay, because you found a property that needed refurbishment and actually done your calculations. Okay, hopefully that answers your question, John. Really good question, by the way. So thank you. Good question. Okay, so your market comparables. This is looking at properties online that have been sold. Okay, so sold properties. And they need to be of the same type. So you can't say, well, this is a 2-bed terrace and that's a 3-bed semi-detached. That's sold for 100, so this is probably worth 100. It's not how it works. Okay, you want to find other 2-bed terrace that are very similar shape and size. Okay, and then get the valuation off of that. Okay, that's number 2. And then number 3, which is your final confirmer. Okay, which is your standard due diligence, which is done through your estate agents. Okay, now understand that this is not our primary. Very simply, is not all estate agents are totally truthful and honest as to what a property is worth. Okay, which is why this is not our primary purpose. Okay, what we're doing is we are piecing together a jigsaw. So all of these will piece together a jigsaw, and then off the back of that, we'll have a much clearer picture as to what the value will actually be worth. Okay, now this is how you find out the end value of the property. That's the first bit. Okay, that's only the first bit, because of course it's not just about the end value of the property, right? It's also about, are you buying for a discount? So let's just say you figured out the DUV, okay, the done up value, so the value in good condition of the house is 100,000. Okay, and you managed to get your offer accepted at 75,000. Now, on the face of it, you might go, yeah, but this sounds like a fantastic deal. I've definitely got a huge discount. This is amazing. We're not accounting for one thing. Okay, it's a pretty big and pretty important thing. Okay, and it is the cost to get the property to this value. Okay, that's the important thing, is what's it going to cost to get the property to its maximum value. Now, if you take a look and you go, okay, well, actually the refurbishment on this house, okay, the refurbishment or renovation, whatever you want to call it, refurbishment on this house is, I don't know, 30K. Now, if you take a look at that, are you buying this house for a discount? Okay, is this for a discount? Or are you in fact buying over the odds, but because the estate agent said, well, it's one that's sold around the corner for 100, you should think, oh, it sounds like a great deal. Okay, you would have been stiffed. Okay, you would have lost money on this deal. Okay, and I can tell you that categorically. I've been there, I've done it. You don't want to do this. It's not fun. So what you want to do before you make your offer, okay, is you want to be accounting for the refurbishment cost. So 100K was the value. That's how much it's going to be worth when the refurb's done. So it's a 30K refurb. So to spend 70K, to have your offer in at 70K means you're buying at market value. So at this point, you probably want to be looking to try and get it in somewhere around 60K max, I'd say, okay, as an example. And then you can see here, you've managed to buy for a discount because, of course, that's 90K. Oh, sorry. Okay, so 100K minus 90K means you've got a 10K discount. Okay, we're all happy with discount, by the way, how you make sure you get a discount and why it's important. Okay, actually, let me delve into why it's important a little bit more here. Okay, so you've managed to buy the house for a little bit of a discount. Now, let me do some numbers with you quickly to show why this is important. Okay, just so you know, the biggest trick isn't knowing this stuff. The biggest trick is actually finding those deals, being able to negotiate them. And that's what we actually teach in depth in the 3-day training, exactly how to do that step by step. Obviously, we've only got, well, I mean, already half an hour into the stream, and we're only about a third of the way through, or half the way through of what I wanted to cover already. So, so we'll go through that in depth on the 3-day training. Now, essentially, the reason it's important, because let's just say, okay, you've just bought the house for 60K. Okay, you've bought the house for 60K. Okay, and then the refurb on this house, okay, the refurb on this house, let's just say for this example is 20K. Okay, nice and simple. And at this point, you spent 80K. Okay, nice and simple. And the house is worth 100K. Now that the refurbishment's been done, the house is worth 100,000. The bank will lend you 75% on an investment property, which means they will lend you 75% of the value of the house. Now, if the bank now loans you 75K, and please understand, I know that there's other costs and stuff involved. I'm teaching you the concept here. The granular we don't have time for. Okay, but understand the concept and everything then comes together. Okay, so you're in for 80. Let's just say this includes your stamp duty and other costs. You're in for 80. The bank's just giving you 75K, which means you have £5,000 invested in this house. That's it. That's all you have invested. Now, if you figure, if you were to buy this house at market value, right at the beginning, okay, so if you were to buy it, as John worded it, a sound property that could give you instant cash flow, instead of this house costing you £5,000, okay, okay, your purchase price would be 100K because the property's in good condition. Okay, the mortgage that they give you would be 75K. which means the amount of money you've got invested at this point is 25K, which is a significantly higher figure than the 5K from earlier. Now, understand, typically on a buy-to-let, you're looking at leaving somewhere in between 10 and 15,000, which is still significantly better than investing 25,000 per house. Okay, so it's important that you make sure you get a discount on your investment properties. Does this make sense? Let me just check in with you guys and fact check, make sure you guys all are up with me, because I'm going at a very fast pace here, and we're covering a lot of ground very, very quickly. Just want to check, does this make sense? Okay, it's really hard when you're waiting for the comments to come through. Yes, okay, cool, lovely. Okay, that was the first two. Now the third one, which is a big one, is demand. Okay, demand. Now it's really interesting, because when a lot of people start their investment journey, they pick their investment area based on what is close to them, based on what they see as a quote unquote good area. The problem is investment properties are actually best not in good areas. The investment properties are best in normal areas. So you're verging on council estates, like your average worker home areas. Okay, what we call bread and butter housing, 2-3 bed terrace, 2-3 bed semis in normal rundown areas, not upmarket. Reason very simply is upmarket, you've got a lot more demand, you've got a lot more spend on the money, it costs you a lot more money, and the rent isn't as high. Okay, very simply, the rent isn't as high. So you want to make sure that you have a high rental demand area. Now, let me just give you an interesting visual. This for me, I always find really interesting. So hopefully you guys will know exactly what this is when I draw it out. Okay. Hopefully that is visual enough for you guys to know exactly what it is. And yeah, I mean, this is obviously a seesaw. Okay, a seesaw. Now, there's a couple of things if you consider within any investment market. So you got so flip, or I mean, I suppose flip's not the right word, but cash flow, and the other word is going to be capital. Okay, which is basically like an area where you're going to be getting capital appreciation, where the value of property is very high. Okay, so this is where you have really good rental returns, so good cash flow, and this is where you have good capital appreciation, so the value of the property goes up quickly. Now, it's really interesting, because if you consider, okay, in terms of logic, is if you have an area where you have a high demand for properties, where a lot of people, they're able to buy properties. So if you think of your more upmarket areas, where most of the people in those areas are home owners as opposed to home renters, okay, what you'll tend to find is that the demand for purchasing properties goes up, and therefore the demand for rent, the demand for rent goes down. Okay, now when that happens, what you'll tend to find is the values of the properties in this area tend to be high, and the rents tend to be low in comparison. Whereas if you have an investment area where the supply and demand is flipped the other way, where you've got a lot of people who cannot afford to buy houses, okay, then the demand for buying houses is low, therefore the value stays low. So simple supply and demand in economics. Okay, however, because people still want to live there, what you'll tend to find is that the demand for rental is higher, okay, which means the rents go up, but the values stay low. Now, this is kind of your sweet spot where you have this kind of thing happening, okay? Now, in terms of demand, it's making sure that you have enough rental demand in that area. There's a whole bunch of things to consider when it comes to rental demand. Now, in my experience, I've only found one property out of the thousands that we've transacted on. Well, certainly hundreds we've transacted on in the past few years. Out of all of those, we've only found one property that just didn't seem to have the demand there, which still makes no sense to me, because, I mean, all the pointers point towards it having a demand, but it is what it is. But as a general rule of thumb, when you're in an investment area and you look around and none of the streets, like all of the houses are full, they're not all boarded up, okay, this is generally a typical sign that, you know, the houses are lived in. which means there's a demand for people to live in that area. It's very simply, unless you have a whole bunch of empty properties with for sale boards and rental boards and everything all down there, you'll tend to find that it's an area that has a solid rental or purchase demand. Now, the beauty is whenever you find that the rents are high compared to the values, that means by definition that the demand for rental has to be high in that area. Okay, because the houses are full, and if the values are low, it means people aren't buying them to live in, which means it has to therefore be a strong buy-to-let or a strong rental market. Okay, so there's a strong demand there. Now, there's a few other things you can do to check the demand. You can check in with local letting agents. So always very useful as part of your due diligence. Now, please understand that when you're checking the stuff, you're actually checking the stuff before you start investing in that area. So rather than doing what most investors do, where you say, actually, I just want to go invest over here. This sounds like great fun. It's just up the road from me. My uncle Bob, he owns a house here, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you need to be selecting your investment area based on the strategy you are choosing and based on where it performs best. Okay, where it performs best, not based on where you go, well, actually, I like the area. It's nice. Okay, rental properties are not best in nice areas. Rental properties are best in normal areas. Okay, maybe a little rundown. Okay, these are typically the best areas. And as part of you selecting your investment area this way, okay, based on making sure it also has good demand, that means when you get an offer agreed within this area, you know in all likelihood you're going to have the demand you need. The only thing you've got left to do then when you get your offer accepted is then run your full due diligence. Okay, and I think due diligence will be a good call for us to have. So I think maybe next week, would it be useful if we have a call on due diligence, how you actually run due diligence as to whether a deal is good or not? Would that be a useful call for you guys? If it is, then just pop a yes in the chat box. That's on YouTube or the Facebook Live, just so I know that that would work for you guys. If not, if you've got a different topic you'd love to cover, I'm more than open to you saying, actually, can we do this? Okay, I love this stuff and I love to talk about property, and this is all my world. So anything else you prefer to talk about? Absolutely cool. Okay, cool. So yes, we've got a lot of people wanting to run through due diligence, which is awesome. So yes, so we'll run through due diligence off the back of this as well, which will be very cool. Okay. So in terms of the three things that you need to make sure your investment area or your investment property has, so before you buy a deal, the three things that it needs to make sure it has, as we covered, so number one is it needs to make sure it has cash flow. Okay. Okay. Number two, you need to make sure you have discounts. And then number three is you need to make sure you have demand. Okay, now we've covered those in as much as I possibly can cover in the time we've got allowed. Hopefully you guys have had a lot of value from this. Next thing that I want to do, though, is I want to give you guys some exercises. So an exercise and some next steps. So in terms of the exercise that I think would be useful for you to take away off the back of this session, this live stream, and hopefully, interestingly, let me just check in. Who actually attended the previous, any of the previous calls, any of the previous live streams? If that's you, give me an I just in the chat box, just so I know I've got a lot of you guys coming back. I mean, we've got a reasonable number of people on either set currently on, which is pretty cool considering this is a completely new channel. But yeah, if you've attended one of the previous ones, just give me an I, just so I know that you know we've got some repeats. And then I'm going to check in from you guys that have come back again. Yep, okay, cool. So we've got a few of you from you guys that have come back again. Who has actually been doing the exercises and homework we've been setting? So I believe we set one last week. We're going to be setting one again this week. Who actually did the one from last week already? Lockdown independent. I'm just sort of curious as to who's actually fulfilling their little tasks and challenges and taking through their next steps. Okay, and I'm sure it's going to be a few of you, which is very cool. Okay, cool. So in terms of your exercise, so the exercise that would be useful for you to be able to implement the learnings from this that you need to take away is I want you to find some properties online. Okay, so go online, take a look. It doesn't matter what the area is for now. So the whole idea is to go through the exercise and get the understanding done. Okay, so go through some properties online. So go through Rightmove. So Rigmove's typically the biggest portal, although they've shot themselves in the foot pretty heavily lately and may not be the biggest portal. Zoopla made a big play on the market, which I've recently learned, which is very cool. But yeah, so take a look at on Rightmove. Just go take a look, go find some properties in whatever area. And you want to find properties in need of refurbishment. Okay, so don't just find your nice, good-looking houses. Okay, go find properties that you go, this could do with some work. Now, let me set you some criteria as to the types of properties you want to look for. So you want to be looking for 2 to 4 bedroom houses. Okay, 2 to 4 bedroom houses, terraced or semi, no detached. Okay, terraced or semi houses. Okay, and you want to be having it with a maximum price of 150,000. Ideally less than 100, but a maximum price of 150. Because if you live in Cambridge, then of course the prices are a little bit higher. Okay, now out of those properties, go find all of the ones that need refurbishing. Okay, you can see it by the photos. The photos are pretty self-explanatory. You go, oh, this could do some work. Okay, then take that, and what I want you to do is essentially see if you can find one. Okay, now you've got a bit of a rough idea in terms of comparables and all that stuff to figure out your values, and you also now know some of the calculations and stuff to figure out the cash flow. See if you can find one that you think would work out as a deal. Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, because it's extremely difficult to find deals unless you have the right tools, the right system, and the right guidance. And even when you find the right deal, it's then knowing if it's the right deal, and that's sort of what we're here for. That's what mentorship's all about, is to give you the guidance and support to make sure you get that. Okay, so I want to just check in. Okay, cool. Okay, show me a house in Cambridge for 150K. I love it. I love it. For some reason, the comments don't seem to slide down. Yes, Nick, I am. Talking about you on that one, but yes. So yeah, see if you can find a deal online. Just take a look. See it needs refurbishment. Just take a wild guess as to what the refurbishment is. Okay, and if you say, I don't know, I guess we could probably get it in for 10, 15,000. This is a desktop exercise just to go through the whole psychology of it. Now, typically, what you'll find to be able to get a good return, a good discount, a good cash flow, a good all of that sort of stuff. In terms of all of the properties in the market, out of every one that needs refurbishing, you'll probably find 1 in every 50 or so that may work out as a deal for a good return. Okay, which is why I say it's worthwhile you going through this process and this exercise, seeing if you're lying to yourself or kidding yourself on what a good deal is, and just sort of getting to the point where you go, okay, cool, I now understand the process, the basic process, and of course, this is where we sort of dive into it a little bit more in depth. Now, in terms of next steps, so of course, that's your exercise, that's your homework to try and get done between now and our next call, which is next Tuesday at 8 p.m., which I think we'll probably talk a little bit about due diligence. I think that'll be a pretty cool call. Okay, so next steps is I want you to, so obviously find some properties online and need refurbishment, estimate the value and the rent. Okay, so this is how the steps work. So estimate the value and the rent. All right. So you're going to estimate the value, so the end value. So look at sold comparables. You can call some estate agents if you want, but sold comparables is your easiest one. You can then go on to Home Track if you want the £20 evaluation. So they're not cheap. Okay, but you can go on there, go check that out just to give yourself some confirmation. It's worth just running a tester, just to see how far you are out in terms of valuations. Okay, and then estimate the rent. So take a look at properties that are for rent in the area. Now, whatever they're on for rent for, that's pretty much the market cap. That's normally where you're about. So just go take a look for the average within a quarter mile or within a half a mile of the same type of property. That'll give you an idea of the rent. Okay. Now with those, then I want you to work out roughly what you think the cash flow will be with a mortgage interest rate of, I don't know, 5%. And if it's over 100, then work it out at 3% and see what your cash flow would be. Okay. And it's worth doing. It's a worthwhile exercise because this will tell you, does a cash flow. Okay. That's the first thing. Does a cash flow. Okay, then once you've worked out the cash flow, then try and work out the discount. So what it's on the market for, estimate your refurbishment cost, what it will value up at. Okay, and then just see if they've listed it at a fair price. Now, you're often, on the most part, you're going to find if a house is worth 100,000 in good condition and it needs 20,000's worth of work, they might have it in the market for 90,000. Okay, which is still not a discount. You're still paying 10,000 over the odds of that. Okay, but it's worth taking a look and going through this process. Off the back of that, okay, once you have that figured out, just do this with a handful of properties and go, okay, out of all of these properties I've looked at, how many of these are actually, would they work as a deal? Okay, based on very basic criteria of just making sure you get a good discount, making sure you've got cash flow. Okay, and if you find some good deals that way, execute. Okay, feel free to come along to one of our trainings. We'll go through how you can execute, what you need to do, and all your next steps off the back of that. But yeah, you potentially have found a good deal. You then want to run due diligence, which we're going to be going through on the next call, which is in 1 week's time, same time, which is very cool. Okay, right. So that is the core of everything I wanted to cover with you guys today. There's a couple more things that I would love to say. Please feel free to subscribe within the YouTube channel. If you just search YouTube under Katana Group, you'll find us. So make sure you subscribe on our YouTube. You'll be kept up to date with everything we do, all of our live streams, all of the updates, all of that fun stuff. Please also make sure you join our Facebook page and Katana Property Channel Facebook group. The Facebook page is Katana Group Limited or Katana Group LTT or LTD. The Facebook page is Katana Property Channel. Just make sure you get yourself booked into both of these, and then you'll be able to receive everything. If you want to be hearing from us in terms of emails, we give loads of updates, loads of market information, all that kind of fun stuff comes out as well via email. If you want to get subscribed onto our mailing list, all you got to do is register to come along to one of our events. Okay, very simply. Right now, we're actually doing an introductory thing because we're running a 3-day training online, and we're doing something very, very special. So typically, our 3-day training, it's normally a charged event. Because we're trying something different within the event, we're actually going to do an introductory offer over the next week. If you'd like to attend one of our 3-day trainings, we've got one running the 8th to 10th of May. So that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It runs roughly 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. all 3 days. If you want to attend that absolutely for free, all you have to do is just click on one of the links. So I'm sure Kathy's probably going to drop one of the links into Facebook and YouTube. So just click on that link. You can get yourself booked in absolutely for free. And you can get yourself coming along to one of our 3-day trainings. And we'll be working with you in depth, going through how to do all of this, as well as how to raise finance, 20 different ways to raise finance and all that good stuff. But that being said, I mean, that pretty much covers everything I wanted to cover. Have you guys got any questions before we move on, before we sort of wrap up for the day? And I'll give you guys a second to be able to answer. If you've got a question, just give me a cue in the chat box, just so I don't carry on and skip over without you. Because last thing I want to do is sort of end the stream and you've got questions that you're 3/4 of the way typing through just before you hit enter, the stream ends and you're like, oh, damn it. Okay, if you're catching this as a recording, just pop your questions in the chat box. Either me or the team will be monitoring this at all times, and we'll get in touch with you or we'll respond to your questions gladly. We're trying to offer a free training, a free mentorship for a couple of reasons, really. So one, to help you keep your sanity. Okay, because this whole corona thing is not good for a person's sanity. And two, much more importantly, is to enable you to continue to learn and grow and develop while all of this stuff is going on. So when it finishes, when it all wraps up, you can hit the ground running with your property journey and start to build that portfolio, start to create that financial support, that financial backing that enables you when all of this stuff happens in your life to make sure that you and your family are financially set forever, without having to worry about this stuff. Okay, there are landlords all over the country that are extremely glad that they have portfolios right now, because although yes, some tenants are having holidays on payments, they still have to pay that. Okay, and the landlord just has a holiday on the mortgage, so it works out okay. But the fact is, they've still got money coming in when a lot of people don't. So make sure you get yourself along to our 3-day training. Do just get yourself booked into the link. It's going to be a live stream on a webinar. Something similar to this, except a lot more interactive and engaging. We've got a lot more time together. Get yourself booked into that. I look forward to seeing you at the training. Failing that, just make sure you get your subs in. Give us like a hearts and bells and whatever it is, just so that we know you guys are getting a lot of value from this. And also just to keep bumping the stream up so more and more people can see it and more people can join and get value from what we're doing. Other than that, that kind of wraps us up for the day. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you guys. I hope you guys have had a lot of value from what we've done, and you are taking this forward to be able to help you build your portfolio going forward. Thank you very much, guys. Hope you have a good day. See you later. Bye.